All right, so I'm ready to dive into something pretty fascinating today.
Always.
This is going to be good.
Yeah.
This is Elvis Presley,
Yeah.
the king of rock and roll, but also his deep love for gospel music.
Mm.
So we're going to be looking at How Great Thou Art, the album.
Yeah.
We've got his Wikipedia entry for the album
Excellent.
and lots of interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, it's funny because most people think of Elvis as the hip swiveling, rock and roll star.
Right.
But his connection to gospel goes so deep.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a huge part of his upbringing, in the South.
Absolutely.
And, continued to influence his music.
Throughout his career.
Yeah, all the way through his career.
Yeah, and by 1965, his movie career was kind of,
Yeah.
losing its shine a little bit.
Dating.
But here's the interesting thing. His 1960 gospel album, his Hand in Mine was still selling really well.
Right.
And then a single from those sessions, Crying in the Chapel, became a huge hit in 65.
Wow.
So RCA saw an opportunity, and they're like, okay, let's finally give Elvis the go-ahead to do another gospel album.
I think that the success of Crying in the Chapel really speaks volumes.
Yeah.
It shows there was a real hunger
Yeah.
for this side of Elvis,
Yeah.
even, during the British invasion and everything that was going on
Exactly.
with popular music.
Yeah, people wanted something with soul.
Yeah.
So they finally started recording the album in May of 66.
Okay.
It wasn't released until February of 67.
Really?
Why the delay? Why not just capitalize on that momentum?
Yeah. I think this shows how seriously Elvis took this project.
Okay.
He wasn't just like, oh, Crying in the Chapel is a hit. Let's throw something together.
Right.
He wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
And the album wasn't rushed. It was very carefully curated.
Okay.
They had the slower, more traditional hymns on one side.
Right.
Then they had the, faster, more upbeat gospel songs on the other side.
So like a musical journey through different shades of gospel, which probably made it appealing to a wider audience.
Right. You got something for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, you have to think about the context, Gospel music wasn't just about religion for Elvis.
Right.
It was intertwined with, his Southern identity, his childhood, his community.
Yeah.
So this was a deeply personal statement.
Yeah, it's like you can feel that personal touch is everywhere, even down to the album cover, which features a church in Massachusetts. But they didn't just pick any old image.
Right.
It was a very deliberate choice to emphasize that traditional gospel feel.
Absolutely. And in the recording process, Elvis was very hands-on.
Okay.
He worked, extensively with his entourage at Graceland,
Right.
choosing songs, even songs that weren't owned by his publisher.
Really?
There's a story that he really wanted Jimmy Jones,
Oh, yeah.
the renowned gospel singer, to be on the album, but they couldn't find him.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine how amazing that would have been,
Oh, man.
that collaboration?
Epic.
Yeah.
So who did they end up getting?
Well, they brought in the Imperials,
Okay.
who are Elvis's favorite gospel quartet,
Yeah.
along with the Jordanaires and a female backing group.
Okay.
Quartets, were a staple of gospel music,
Yeah.
known for their tight harmonies and powerful vocals.
Wow. So a lot of voices coming together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just a richness and depth
Yeah.
to the music.
That must have been pretty incredible in the studio.
Yeah.
I'm picturing chills and goosebumps everywhere.
Yeah. A lot of energy, a lot of feeling.
So are there any specific moments from that recording process that really stand out?
Oh, there are quite a few, but let's start with the title track, How Great Thou Art.
Okay.
It only took them 4 takes to get it right,
Wow.
which for Elvis was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
But he was so emotionally invested in the performance that he reportedly nearly fainted after the final take.
Oh, wow.
That's how powerful this music was for him.
It gives me chills just thinking about that.
Yeah.
So to have that kind of connection to a song,
Incredible.
yeah, it's something special.
It sounds like not all the songs came together so easily, though.
You're right. Stand By Me, for example,
Yeah.
proved surprisingly challenging for Elvis.
Interesting.
Yeah, they had to do numerous takes to kind of capture the exact feeling he wanted.
So even the King had his struggles in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to ask about Crying in the Chapel.
Mm.
It was already a hit.
Yeah.
Why include it on this album?
Well, I think it served a few purposes. It was a nod to its recent success,
Sure.
but it also tied the album back to his earlier gospel work.
Right.
It was a way of reminding everyone this wasn't just a phase for him.
Right.
Gospel had always been there.
Always been a part of him.
Yeah.
All right, so we set the stage. Elvis is back in the studio, pouring his heart and soul into this gospel album.
Right.
So let's dive into the music itself.
Okay.
What are some of the tracks that really stand out to you that capture the essence of this album? Well, you got to start with the title track, right?
Yeah.
How Great Thou Art, this powerful hymn, originally written in Swedish, then translated into English.
Wow.
All about praising the majesty of God's creation, and Elvis just delivers it
Oh, yeah.
with such raw emotion. Have you heard his version?
I mean, it's spine-tingling.
Yeah.
And, you can feel the conviction in his voice. And we talked about him almost fainting after that last take.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he was channeling something
Right.
beyond himself in that song.
It's powerful stuff.
It gives me chills just thinking about it.
Now, in contrast to the grandeur of How Great Thou Art, there's In the Garden.
Yeah.
This one's much more intimate and reflective.
Okay.
It's about finding peace and solace and communion with God.
And the way he sings it, it just feels so personal.
Yeah.
Like he's inviting you into his own private moment of reflection.
Right.
You know?
And his voice is softer here, but
Yeah.
less powerful.
Right.
It really showcases his range as a vocalist. He could belt out these powerful anthems.
Right.
But he can also deliver these tender, heartfelt performances that just draw you in.
Absolutely. And then there's somebody bigger than you and I.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a completely different vibe.
Totally different vibe. This one makes you want to clap along,
Yeah.
get your feet moving.
Get up and dance.
It's got that classic gospel energy that's just infectious.
Yeah, it's just pure joy.
Yeah, celebration of faith.
Pure and simple.
And you can hear the influence of his gospel roots.
Right.
The way he phrases the lyrics and the energy he brings to the song.
So you've got these slower, more introspective hymns, and then you've got these upbeat, almost jubilant tracks.
Right.
It's a really nice balance.
Yeah, it's a great balance of the different styles that make up gospel music.
Speaking of balance, what about Farther Along?
Oh, yeah.
This one just feels so hopeful and resilient.
Yeah.
Even though it acknowledges the struggles of life.
Right. It's a powerful message. And Elvis's delivery is both comforting and inspiring. Yeah.
There's this rawness in his voice that makes it feel like he's sharing a part of his own personal journey with you.
Yeah.
It's vulnerable. It's honest.
And speaking of honesty, remember how we talked about Stand By Me being such a tough one for Elvis to record?
Right.
It took him quite a few takes to get it right.
Right. It's fascinating to listen to the final version, knowing that, he brings this bluesy quality to it, bending the notes, adding layers of emotion.
Yeah.
It's still Stand By Me, but it's got this distinct Elvis flavor to it.
Yeah, and then you have Without Him, which is so simple.
Right.
Yet so profound.
It's a very straightforward declaration of faith.
Yeah.
But Elvis's performance is stripped down and sincere.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful moment on the album.
Now, remember how we talked about the structure of the album?
Yes.
With those slower songs on one side and the faster songs on the other?
Right, like a musical journey.
Yeah.
Taking you through different moods and tempos.
So let's flip the record over, so to speak.
Okay.
And explore that more upbeat side.
I'm ready to get my spirit lifted.
Okay, so we've got So High, which is just pure gospel joy, driving rhythm. And Elvis's vocals are soaring.
Yeah.
It's the kind of song that makes you want to get up and dance.
I mean, it's hard not to feel uplifted by this one.
Yeah.
It's like a shot of pure energy.
Yeah.
And a reminder of the power of music to lift your spirits.
Absolutely. And then there's Where Could I Go But to the Lord, which is this beautiful song of surrender and trust. Elvis's performance is so moving, conveys this sense of peace and acceptance that's incredibly powerful.
So it's like he's reminding us that even when things are tough,
Right.
we can always find comfort in our faith.
You got it. Now let's talk about By and By.
Okay.
This traditional gospel song all about hope and anticipation for a better world, and Elvis just turns it into this foot-stomping anthem.
I love how he takes these traditional hymns and makes them feel so fresh and alive.
Right. He breathes new life into them.
He never loses sight of the core message, but he's not afraid to put his own spin on it.
Absolutely. And then we have If the Lord Wasn't Walking by My Side, a duet with Jake Hess of the Imperials.
Oh, yeah.
The blend of their voices is incredible.
Oh, man.
You can hear the mutual respect and shared faith shining through.
Yeah, it's definitely a highlight on the album.
Yeah. And we can't forget Run On,
Right.
another traditional gospel song that Elvis transforms into this powerful performance. It's like a call to action, urging listeners to persevere in their faith.
And then there's Where No One Stands Alone, a classic gospel hymn
Right.
that Elvis delivers with such depth and emotion.
Powerful stuff.
It's a reminder that no matter what we're going through, we're never truly alone.
Right.
And of course, we have to mention Crying in the Chapel, which brings us full circle.
Yeah.
It was already a massive hit, but including it here was a stroke of genius.
Right.
It tied the album back to Elvis's gospel roots and reminded everyone that this genre was a constant in his life.
Right, always there.
It's a beautiful ballad.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect way to end an album that's full of heart and soul and spiritual depth.
You know, listening to all these songs, you really get a sense of how versatile Elvis was as a gospel artist.
Absolutely.
He could tackle traditional hymns, upbeat spirituals, tender ballads.
Yeah.
You name it, he could do it.
And he did it all with such passion and conviction.
Yeah.
It's clear that this music meant the world to him.
I think what strikes me most about this album is the honesty in his performance.
Right.
He wasn't putting on a show.
Right.
He was bearing his soul.
Yeah.
And that's something that connects with people.
Absolutely.
On a very deep level.
It's raw. It's authentic.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly moving.
Absolutely.
As we're wrapping up our deep dive into How Great Thou Art, I keep thinking about the cultural landscape surrounding this album's release back in 1967.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was a time of immense change and upheaval in America.
It really was. You know, the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, the Vietnam War was raging, and there was just this underlying sense of unrest and uncertainty.
Right. And in the midst of all that turmoil, Elvis releases this album of heartfelt gospel music.
It's almost like he was offering a message of hope and solace to a nation that desperately needed both.
Yeah, it's interesting because gospel music itself played such a significant role in the civil rights movement.
Absolutely.
You know, spirituals and hymns were such a source of strength and inspiration for African Americans throughout their struggles for equality.
Yeah, so for Elvis, you know, a white Southern artist, to release a gospel album during this pivotal moment in history, it really takes on a whole new level of significance.
Right.
Some critics even saw it as a statement of solidarity.
Wow.
You know, a recognition of the power of music to bridge divides and bring people together.
During a time of such division.
Exactly.
That's a really powerful insight. It makes you think about the album's impact beyond the music itself.
Yeah.
It was a cultural touchstone.
It really was.
That resonated with people on so many levels.
Yeah. And it wasn't just a critical success, it was a commercial hit as well.
Oh, yeah?
This wasn't just Elvis fans buying this album. This reached a much wider audience. I think people were just craving something authentic, something with real heart and soul.
Right.
And this album delivered that.
Yeah, it did. And, you know, speaking of Elvis's career, this album really marked a turning point for him.
It did.
He was stepping back from the Hollywood scene, returning to his musical roots.
It was a bold move, you know?
Yeah.
He could have easily stayed on that Hollywood path.
Yeah.
But he chose to embrace his gospel side.
And it resonated.
It did.
It showed a different side of Elvis.
Yeah.
One that was more grounded, more connected to his Southern heritage.
Right. And he earned his very first Grammy Award.
Which is incredible.
I know. It wasn't for rock and roll.
Yeah.
It wasn't for his acting. It was for this gospel album.
For his gospel music.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes.
It really does.
About the power and impact of this album.
Solidified his status as a true gospel icon.
As we wrap up our deep dive, I'm really struck by how timeless this album is.
Yeah.
I mean, it was released over 50 years ago.
I know.
But its messages of faith, hope, and love still resonate with people today.
It's a testament to the universality of those themes and the power of Elvis's performance.
He brought those songs to life.
He did.
With such authenticity and emotion.
Absolutely.
They transcend time and cultural barriers.
They do.
So, as we leave our listeners to contemplate all that we've discussed, what do you think is the most enduring legacy of How Great Thou Art?
Well, for Elvis personally, it cemented his place as a gospel legend.
Yeah.
You know, it showed the world that he wasn't just a rock and roll star. He was a multifaceted artist with a deep respect for his musical heritage.
Absolutely. But I think the album's legacy extends far beyond Elvis himself.
It does.
I mean, it introduced gospel music to a much wider audience.
It did.
Made it more accessible and appealing to people who may not have given it a chance otherwise.
Right. It opened doors and expanded horizons.
Beautiful way to put it. And, you know, perhaps this deep dive has sparked a curiosity in some of our listeners.
I hope so.
To explore Elvis's gospel music for the first time.
I hope so. If you're looking for something that will move you, inspire you, connect you to something larger than yourself, I encourage you to give How Great Thou Art a listen.
Absolutely.
Approach it with an open heart and let the music wash over you.
You just might be surprised at what you discover.